Dead Code Diaries.
In a small town nestled between thick pine forests and misty hills, life was once quiet, peaceful. Children played in sun-dappled fields, dogs barked in backyards, and every evening the sky turned golden, casting a warmth over the rooftops like a lullaby. 5-year-old Eli Whitmore lived in such a place. He was an ordinary boy with a gap-toothed smile, a fondness for peanut butter sandwiches, and a stuffed bear named Waffles he never let go of. His parents, Sarah and Jonathan Whitmore, were kind-hearted and careful. His mother sang lullabies at bedtime. His father read old storybooks about knights and dragons and made up stories when he ran out of pages. Then, one evening, the sky didn't turn gold. It turned red. It began subtly. A news report mentioned strange outbreaks of anemia in cities across the globe. Then came missing persons, wild animal attacks. Curfews were implemented. The president appeared on television with tired eyes and declared a global health emergency. But in the Whitmore home, they tried to carry on. Eli played with Waffles. Sarah stocked food in the basement. Jonathan boarded up the windows. The power went out one night and never came back. On the third week, Eli noticed something strange. At night, Sarah would sit in the corner of the room and stare at the wall, whispering things in a language Eli didn't understand. Her eyes were dull. Her skin had turned pale, almost blue. Jonathan was next. He locked himself in the bathroom for hours. Eli heard scraping sounds, thumping, and once a slurp. The next morning, only Eli came out. He sat on the steps of their porch with Waffles while the world grew quiet, too quiet. No more barking dogs, no more birds, just the wind and faint screaming from the forests. Weeks passed, months maybe. Time didn't exist anymore, only night. The sun had vanished behind a permanent eclipse, or something worse. Shadows ruled everything now. The world became a husk. Buildings collapsed, roads cracked, and above all else, there were eyes in the dark. Red, unblinking, hungering. Eli wandered through towns and cities, empty and rotting. He saw the signs of what had happened. Piles of clothes, streaks of blood leading into storm drains, only shadows melting into darkness. Torn out Bible pages fluttering in the wind. And he saw them, the vampires. Not the romantic kind from stories. These were starved, bat-like horrors, with twisting spines and jaws that unhinged. They crept through shadows, their limbs too long, their nails like blades. Some wore the remnants of clothes, but they were barely human anymore. They didn't touch Eli. They looked at him, sniffed the air around him, hissed, but never attacked. He didn't know why. One night, Eli found an old radio tower still running on backup solar. Static buzzed through it, but then a voice.
If anyone can hear me, this is the Citadel, safe haven. Latitude 36.8. Please, we're not all gone. Please.
Eli, alone but determined, followed the coordinates. Across dead cities, through vampire nests where bone wind chimes clinked softly in the breeze, through forests where people once lived, now turned to feral, night-creeping creatures, vampires with white, lidless eyes and limbs bent backwards. He met people, survivors. A soldier named Reyes, armed with UV bombs and a broken leg. A nurse named Clara, who carried holy water in baby bottles. A priest, Father Gale, who had tattooed scriptures across his entire body. One by one, they joined Eli. One by one, they protected him. One by one, they died. Reyes was torn apart in a subway tunnel after shielding Eli. Clara melted into ash when a vampire spat venom into her eyes. Father Gale was dragged, screaming, into a cathedral, where the stained glass windows dripped with blood. Through all of it, Eli survived. He finally reached the Citadel, an ancient mountain fortress surrounded by mirrored walls that reflected moonlight. The survivors there stared when they saw him. A doctor scanned his blood, and then they understood. Eli wasn't just human. He was the cure. Somehow, he carried antibodies in his blood that repelled the vampiric virus. His scent made vampires recoil. His presence unsettled them. He wasn't immune. He was hope. But the vampires knew it too. That very night, as the scientists began preparations to replicate his blood, the walls shook. The mountains roared. They came. Thousands of them. A swarm of vampires. Wings and claws and rage pouring from the sky like a hurricane of flesh and fangs. The mirrored walls cracked. The floodlights dimmed. The screams began. Eli hid beneath the chattel. He clutched Waffles, and then silence. He emerged to find everyone gone. No blood, no bodies, just silence. And in the center of the Citadel, a single figure waited. A tall woman in a black dress, pale, her face ageless, her eyes like dying stars. Lilith, the first vampire. She smiled down at Eli.
You are precious, little one. Not just a cure, but a creation. You were made, not born.
Eli's breath caught. Waffles slipped from his hand.
Your blood is the result of centuries of experiments. The perfect play. Immune, pure, untouched.
He backed away, but she didn't follow.
We won't kill you. Not yet. We will watch. Wait. You will grow. And one day, when we're ready, the real feast will begin.
Years passed. The world remained dark. But Eli grew older, stronger, the last human, or something more. He wandered still, left messages on old radios, painted "I am here" on rooftops. He knew the vampires were always watching. He could feel them, but they never touched him. Until he turned 13. That night, he had a dream. He stood before a burning tree. The sky wept blood. Waffles spoke with a voice like thunder.
The end begins when you choose to stop running.
Eli woke up with glowing veins. The air vibrated. He looked into the mirror and saw his eyes, not red, not human, golden. He understood then. He wasn't the last human. He was the first of something new. A child born of the old world, immune to darkness and destined to fight it. He picked up a jagged stake and stepped into the night. The war wasn't over. It had just begun.
Clara Wynne had one rule: no clowns. She didn't know when the fear started. Maybe it was the birthday party at age 6 when the clown leaned too close, face paint melting from sweat, eyes bloodshot and too wide. Or maybe it was that recurring dream, a circus tent, laughter that wasn't laughter, and a face that bent reality itself. At 27, Clara worked at a small-town diner in Brook Hollow, Massachusetts, scraping tips and drowning anxiety in coffee. Her mother had recently passed, leaving behind a mountain of debt. Clara needed a better job. Then came the flyer, pinned on the bulletin board at the diner. Help wanted. Travel with the Cirque de Lune. Room and board included. Good pay. No experience necessary. The words "no experience" and "room and board" did most of the heavy lifting. She called. They answered. The circus arrived in town the next day. Clara met Mr. Dax, a gaunt man in a crimson suit with a voice like honey over gravel. His eyes never blinked. "You'll be with the wardrobe and makeup team," he said. "We can always use hands back there." Clara hesitated at the mention of makeup, her pulse quickening. "No clowns," she murmured. Dax's smile thinned. Of course not, dear. We respect boundaries here. She signed the contract anyway. That night, she boarded the rusted RV that would become her new home. The crew was odd but friendly. There was Maggie, the sword swallower with scars on her neck. Luther, a silent, strong man who smelled of sawdust and sadness. And Theo, the magician's assistant, who always seemed to be watching from the corner of her eye. Everything was fine until the laughter started. First night on the road, Clara woke in her bunk. The RV was still, but outside, muffled giggles floated through the window. Childlike, gurgling. She peeked through the curtain. Nothing. The next day, she asked Theo, "Do we have clowns?" He tilted his head.
Not officially.
That night, she saw them. She had stayed late in the wardrobe tent, organizing old costumes. One box was unmarked, shoved in the corner, under moldy capes. Curious, she opened it. Inside were clown masks. Dozens. Each more grotesque than the last. Wide grins stitched too tight, noses misshapen, eyes hollow and rimmed in black. As she reached in to close the box, she noticed something. The masks were wet. A whisper tickled her ear. "Smile." Clara screamed. Theo rushed in. When she told him what she saw, the box was empty.
Sometimes the circus shows you things,
He said carefully. A week into her contract, the shows began. Clara never saw the performances. She was always behind the scenes. But each night, the crowd roared, hypnotic and primal. One night, she got curious. She peeked between the flaps of the main tent. A spotlight, music box notes. A single clown stood center stage. Its costume was patched from different eras. One red shoe, one bare foot. Its face was not painted. The skin itself was bleached, cracked, and stretched into a permanent grin. Its eyes weren't human. The crowd clapped. No one screamed. Clara backed away and vomited behind the trailer. Theo found her.
You shouldn't watch the show.
"Who are they?" she gasped.
They were us, once.
The truth unraveled in whispers. The Cirque de Lune was ancient, older than any record. The show moved from town to town, feeding off fear and attention. Every few years, it needed new blood. Those who broke the rules, stayed too long, or saw too much were taken. They became painted ones, twisted spirits that wore flesh like a costume, performing forever for audiences too enchanted to know they were watching horror. The clowns weren't actors. They were trapped souls. And Clara was next. That night, Clara tried to leave. She packed her bags and snuck through the field. The woods were just beyond the trailers. She almost made it. A balloon floated from the shadows, bouncing softly. Then another, and another, a trail of them. Behind her, the giggles came again, closer now. They moved like breath down her neck. She ran. The trees grew taller, darker. Shapes danced in her peripheral vision. Red noses, gloved hands, dragging feet. One clown burst from the trees, its mouth torn open in a howling laugh. She fell, hit her head, and everything went black. She awoke in a room she'd never seen. Bright bulbs circled mirrors. Costumes hung on hooks. And there, standing before her, was Mr. Dax.
"You've done well, Clara,"
he said.
"It's time you joined the act."
She fought, screamed, but the door behind her had vanished. Dax approached, holding a paintbrush. From the mirrors, the painted ones stared. He began to draw a red curve on her cheek.
"Don't worry,"
he whispered.
"You'll forget who you were. Most do."
But something resisted in Clara. She kicked him, sending him flying into a rack of wigs. She grabbed the nearest thing, scissors, and stabbed the clown nearest to her. It shrieked. Real blood poured. They could bleed. Armed with that knowledge, Clara set fire to the makeup room. The blaze spread fast. Screams echoed from behind tents as illusions burned away. Audience members vanished like smoke. The painted ones shrieked and melted like wax. Clara ran, choking on smoke, dodging shadows. In the center ring, Mr. Dax stood untouched, arms open.
"Burn us, but the show goes on. It always goes on."
Clara hurled a torch. His smile cracked, revealing a maw of teeth. The tent exploded in flames. Clara survived. The authorities found her wandering a highway, blackened with soot, speaking gibberish. No trace of the circus was ever found, just scorched earth and a single red balloon. She was admitted to a psychiatric facility. The doctors said she was delusional, trauma-induced hallucinations. Circuses don't vanish. Clowns aren't demons. She got better, eventually. She works in a bookstore now. Quiet, safe. But every night, she dreams of a tent in the distance. The music box starts to play, and she wakes up with a red smear on her cheek.
The International Space Station floated in perfect silence above Earth, a steel sanctuary orbiting a planet teeming with life and strife. Commander Eli Ross of NASA and cosmonaut Alexei Morozov of Roscosmos had spent 6 peaceful months aboard the ISS. They had grown used to the daily rituals of science, exercise, and floating dinners, building an awkward but dependable friendship out of isolation. They would often laugh over dehydrated meals and share music. Eli liked jazz. Alexei preferred haunting Soviet-era folk songs. The rest of the crew had returned to Earth weeks ago leaving just the two of them for final maintenance rotations. The next resupply was scheduled in another month, and then silence from Houston, silence from Moscow. At first, they thought it was a systems failure. Bad satellite relay, perhaps. But as the hours dragged on and automated messages failed to cycle through, the reality became impossible to ignore. Then came the flash. A blinding pulse of light bloomed over the northern hemisphere. Eli watched it first.
"That's not a sunrise,"
he muttered, floating by the cupola module. Alexei floated silently behind him, pale, eyes fixed on the curling mushroom cloud, brooding over what used to be New York. A second light bloomed minutes later, Moscow. Neither man spoke for a long time. The emergency transmission came through 2 hours later, not from Houston or Moscow directly, but from secure military satellites, cold, clinical, pre-recorded fallback protocols from the USA.
"Commander Eli Ross, Code Omega 7, authorized. Execute Protocol Black Star."
From Russia.
Cosmonaut Alexei Morozov. Execute Directive 13Z. Target Eli Ross. Confirm upon completion.
Each man read their orders alone. Then they floated back into the central module, pretending nothing had changed. They shared a meal. They made light conversation, but both had read the fine print. Their last orders were to eliminate each other. The space station became a tomb of tension. Neither slept at the same time. Tools were locked up. Hatches were double-checked. Every sound, a dropped wrench, a vent cycle, became a threat. Eli drifted through the station quietly one evening and noticed Alexei's sleeping bag was empty. That night, he didn't sleep at all. It began with subtle sabotage. Eli noticed his CO2 scrubber was off by just a margin, enough to induce dizziness over time. He corrected it silently and said nothing. Later, Alexei found his oxygen line partially crimped during a spacewalk preparation. Still, no accusations, just smiles. Suspicion simmered like a virus until Eli woke one morning to the sound of a sealed hatch hissing behind him. Alexei had sealed him into the US lab module. Safety check. Alexei said over the comms, voice cold. Stay there for a bit. But the oxygen began to drop. Eli pried the emergency latch with shaking fingers and burst out, gasping. That was the last time either man pretended things were okay. Now they moved like predators. The ISS, once a place of discovery, was now a hunting ground. Darkness pooled in corners. Cameras were blacked out. Ladders became choke points. The station creaked and groaned like an old ship drifting into madness. Eli rigged motion sensors using repurposed lab equipment. Alexei turned the Russian segment into a fortress, locking it down with security overrides. The air between them was thick with unspoken dread. Each man prepared his final move. 3 days later, something strange happened. A new message pulsed through the communications terminal. Encrypted, garbled, not from any official channel. It repeated in distorted static, "You are not alone." Both men assumed it was a trick. Then came the thumping. Late in the artificial night cycle, Eli heard it. Soft, rhythmic tapping on the outer hull, like fingers knocking politely. He checked the cameras. Nothing. Then came the smell. Burnt ozone. Rotting meat in a station, sealed from outside contamination. On the 4th night, Eli saw it. A shadow, drifting through the Japanese module. Humanoid, but wrong. Its limbs moved like fluid. No spacesuit. No helmet. Its face. It wore a face like Eli's. The thing turned and grinned. Eli screamed and hit the emergency lights. By the time Alexei came, it was gone.
You're losing it.
Alexei growled, gun in hand. Not a standard issue weapon, a makeshift pipe hammer from lab scraps.
I saw something.
Eli panted.
It wore my face.
Alexei's face went pale.
I've seen it too.
They locked eyes. Something was up here with them. The entity appeared again, to both of them this time. This time it wore both their faces, flickering, morphing, a chameleon of flesh. It floated toward them in 0G, whispering with static-filled voices.
You are already dead below. Why not join the silence above?
They sealed themselves in opposite modules. The station lights flickered. Systems failed one by one. Oxygen dropped. The temperature dipped to freezing. The thing was feeding on fear, on isolation, on grief. It had been waiting, buried in the station's systems, dormant. Maybe it was extraterrestrial, or maybe it was born from madness, summoned by war. One final transmission came through as Eli floated alone in the dark.
Terminate the cycle. There must only be one.
Alexei sent a similar message.
The station cannot hold two. One survives. One ascends.
The entity demanded a sacrifice. Eli found Alexei floating in the Soyuz return module, preparing launch. Their eyes met. A struggle followed. Brutal. Silent. In 0G, every movement was a dance of death. Eli got the upper hand, drove a screwdriver into Alexei's shoulder. Blood floated like red tears. But Alexei smiled through the pain and whispered,
It's already inside you, too.
Eli hesitated, just long enough. One wore Eli's. Both screamed. The real men couldn't tell who was real anymore. Months later, a new NASA mission arrives to an apparently lifeless ISS. They find no bodies, only 2 recorded logs. One from Eli, one from Alexei. Both claim the other went mad. Both claim they survived. Both logs are identical, word for word. And in the background of each, a third face stares silently into the camera, smiling.